Thank you so much, Josh. It's really wonderful to be with you all and to see you. It's my practice to always begin with a word of gratitude for IJS and the space that is offered here. It's unique and special, and I am incredibly grateful for it. So thank you. And thank you all for your presence today. We are recognizing the beginning of a new month. And after a lot of intensity and perhaps even inner weather of the soul of the previous month, entering into newness. I'm going to start with some words from Psalm 104, verse 19. Asay yareach lamoadim shamesh yadam bo asay yareach lamoadim God made the moon to mark the seasons. The sun knows when to set. So after this very intense time with the ups and downs, perhaps even we might call it the white water of the holy day season that we've just traveled through, where we moved from deep introspection to joyous and intentional community, we meet this new moon of Cheshvan with perhaps a little bit of quiet renewal. I want to name a bridging that we're going to invite into our space today, and that's between this idea of the new moon that we're welcoming in and Parshat Noach. In the Parsha, we have these words, Sohar ta'aseh lateva, make an opening in the ark. We're going to enter the ark today. We're also going to enter the word. And my invitation to us all is to allow these words to be a shelter that carries us through whatever churning waters you may be encountering at this moment. Our teacher, Jordan Bendat Appel, taught this, that our practice itself is an ark that hopefully we don't build when things are completely cuckoo in our lives. That we build really intentionally, plank by plank, as we have a grounding practice, that when the flood comes, it's there to hold us up and allow us to ride the waves of life that we encounter. I found that teaching that I learned from Jordan so many years ago to have really stuck with me, and so it's one that I love to share whenever we come to Parshat Noach. So I want to share a teaching today also that comes from the Baal Shem Tov through his grandson, the Degel Machane Ephraim. There is a source sheet that is being shared in the chat. So you can access that if you want. It's not my practice to put that up on the screen. Some people, it can actually be distracting to have those words to go off on. But if it's grounding for you, please go ahead and do open it up through the chat. So the Baal Shem Tov, said that this word that we use for ark in Hebrew, this word teva, actually means word. And that our parsha invites us to make an opening for the word. This means that we should be attentive to enlightening the words that arise from our lips, to allowing them to be filled with effervescence, with light. The image of the ark continues as a metaphor in the teaching from the Besht, wherein worlds, souls, and divinities all coexist on the different decks of the ark. And he breaks this down further, connecting each level to a deck in the ark with speech. And so there's a connection with speech at the basic level, which he connects to the neshama or soul. And speech at the basic level, and then the intermediary level with the neshama. And then at the uppermost level, speech connected to divinity. So we have basic speech, soul speech, and divine speech. And then he concludes this teaching saying, all of these levels you should make, you should do. The speech, the word coming out of your mouth should have this intention and be in complete faithfulness, knowing that each act of speech, there are bottom, second, and third levels, the worlds, souls, and divinities. And then he says, understand this, just get it, just receive it. Let it be a part of you. So I think that's what we're going to do today, is make an opening in our hearts at this time of opening, this new moon, and an opening for our words to create worlds and to create light. I'm going to invite you now to find a comfortable yet dignified way to sit, noticing where the body meets the sitting place. Inviting a sense of centering, and even taking a moment to notice, is the physical body centered? Can move from side to side, finding that centering place, and backwards and forwards, finding the centering place. The name Noach is connected also to the word menucha, or rest. So we invite a sense of restfulness into the body, but maintaining our dignified posture. You can allow your eyes either to come to a soft focus a few feet in front of yourself, or if it's more comfortable for you, you can allow your eyes to completely and gently close. And as you do so, without adjusting or controlling. Just notice the steady current of the breath. Just like waves as it enters and leaves the body. And noting that as we pay attention to the breath, awareness rides on these waves in steadiness. As we continue to notice the breath, I'll invite you to enter the teva, to enter the arc, and to enter the word, and to choose either a phrase or a word and envision it as planks of the arc, building up this metaphor for your practice. That keeps us afloat and allows us to ride the turbulent waves of our own lives. Whatever phrase you've chosen as the planks with which you'll build your arc, or whatever word you've chosen, you can allow that to be your anchor today, coming back to it whenever the mind should wander. Just gently noticing, finding presence, returning to the anchoring word and the gentle waves of the breath. We're going to sit silently for about 8 minutes. And when our silent sitting is over, we'll emerge from that with song. Shamesh yadam mevo asayarei lemoadim Shemesh Shemesh yadam mevo May this month be a vessel of gentle renewal for the emergence of beauty in the Word. Thank you for your presence.
Thank you, Kerith. We'll invite everybody to stay around at the top of the hour to ask any questions and have a conversation about the teaching and the practice. If you need to leave us, we wish you Tzedchem L'Shalom, farewell, and hope you'll come back. We'll be back same time and channel tomorrow. Right now, we have an opportunity for those who are remembering loved ones to do so by reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. If you are remembering somebody today and you want to enter their name in the chat, you're able to do that. And you can also unmute yourself and you can join me in reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'b'meichon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimu amen. Yehei shmei Rabba levarach la'olam u'la'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yid'od al shmei v'yikdashad v'yichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata v'shbachata v'nechemata v'niran la'alma amen. Yehei shlama Rabba v'yishmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Boseh shalom v'yaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yoshvei
Amen.
Okay, thank you. So we'll welcome Kerith back. And Kerith, thank you so much, as always, both for your music and for the text teaching and your meditation guidance. And lovely today to have the Shruti box with us. So it was sweet. Really a wonderful teaching, and I want to encourage you if you have questions that you want to share in the chat, you're welcome to make comments and reflections. But if you want to have a question, just label it in all caps "question" so we can see it most easily. That helps us, and obviously feel welcome to respond to one another. But just a gentle reminder that this is a space where we try to practice no fixing, advising, saving, or correcting, and to use, in the spirit of the teaching, the intention of mindful speech, shmirat hadibur. So, Kerith, that was such a wonderful invitation to sort of go inside the word and playing with this idea of teva, meaning both arc but also meaning word, and the teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, that goes into that of these multiple layers of this first level, second level, third level, and I'd love to just give you an opportunity to unpack for us, maybe for yourself, how you understand those multiple. I mean, one of the questions that came up for me is how do we interact with those ideas of multiple levels or registers, of words, of speech? So if we want to start there, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I love to think about this. I mean, this teaching is really bolstered for me by Jordan's words about our practice, because
Yeah.
this idea of really building this arc, plank by plank, as a metaphor for our practice, has really just stayed very consistently with me since I received that teaching from Jordan. So when I think about those levels, I think about the work that goes into building them in our sitting practice, but also what that means for the way that we walk through the world and how we utilize our speech as people who practice Judaism mindfully, hopefully.
Mm,
So those levels for me, they're present in my sitting, but I think much more present in my interaction with the world around me, right? So
mm,
my basic level speech is about communicating basic things to those around me. If I'm in a grocery store, talking to a clerk or making an order at a store, or telling my spouse as we're cooking dinner in the kitchen, I need to get into that drawer.
right.
And how I do that is really, really important. So that's the basic level. And then there's this idea of the speech at the level of neshama. And I think about that in those like heart conversations that we have sometimes with people who are very dear to us. I also have the great privilege of being on faculty at Hebrew Union College. And so many of my conversations that I have there with students who I get to interact with regularly, those are real neshama conversations. I also feel like any sort of chavruta that we get to participate in, those are soul conversations. So those enter our lives in different ways. And part of that takes a little more attention in terms of we have to create those situations. Usually they don't, it's very unusual that we just end up in a soul conversation with somebody.
Hmm.
And then finally, this idea of the language of divinity. In our lives, I think the way that that enters our lives is however we communicate with God. And for some of us, that may be like what we're doing here this morning, right? And I know that is part of it for me. Another big part of it for me is entering into prayer, and particularly as a cantor, that piece is incredibly present for me. Or, if we're a person who practices Hidbodedut, the many different ways that we can enter into conversation with divinity. And so while those are present on a level while we sit, it's not really until we leave our sitting that we get to see how does it play out in the real world, which
Hmm.
is always the challenge, right?
Mm, yeah. Thank you. Couple of short reflections that come in. I want to invite others if you have questions that are arising for you, or anything about your experience with the practice or the teaching today, to just feel welcome to share. Um, but I love Harris, pointing out here that the levels are reminders of the ways we have to think when we are in conversation with each person, whether we agree with them or not, that there's a relationship that's happening, right?
Yeah,
Um,
one of my favorite I used to have in my office. I have a new office, but maybe I should print this out and put it up again. I used to have the words Shiviti Adonai Lenegdi Tamid, noticing that the person who is negdi is like across from me,
my
can
opponent,
also
yeah.
be, my opponent, but God is in that space,
Hmm.
in that with
Place
us.
the divine before me always, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Glenn, I see your question here, which is a great question. Speech, words, and song each are wrapped with the nonverbal, right, as well. Often the nonverbal cloaks the various levels, basic, soul, and divine. Can you say a bit more about using song as helping us maybe unwrap, the nonverbal elements? That's a wonderful question, especially for you.
Yeah, I think, you know, song is connected also so deeply to breath. It it rides the wave of the breath, and it's just through the mechanism of the vibration of the vocal cords that we turn breath into song. So, so song is taking something that is so elemental about our being and just adding something from the personal to it. Um, I think that, so many people have had this experience of being told to not sing when they're children and carry that with them. Um, and I think about that as this true recognition of the fact that when we sing, it's a very, very vulnerable act. When we play an instrument, it's external from ourselves. So we can always like externalize any criticism of that instrument. But when it's our own voice, whether the criticism is coming from ourselves or from with others, it's just an incredibly vulnerable act. And I think that that adds to the power of it. And so the cloaking of these words with song, when we are the giver of that song, we do so in a way that makes us incredibly vulnerable. And that, I think, right away takes us to the level, to the soul level, right? Because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with another, we're not having a basic conversation. It's already at that second level. So, and if we're the receiver of song, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the person who's like offering is offering at the soul level. So it's an invitation, I think, just to notice that, and I think it's also part of the reason that people are often moved emotionally when words are set to music. It's not just the words, right? It's the connection that is felt
Mm.
because of that vulnerability
Mm.
that someone's offering it with.
If you want to hear more about this, I'm going to make a plug for my conversation with Jane Eisner about Carole King tomorrow night. But yeah, and you can read Jane's book. But yeah, there's a lot to reflect on there, the relation of words and music. And also, I think to Glenn's question, also that as much as we are, it's really really interesting. As much as words play such a powerful role in creation of worlds. And here, we have the notion of words as an ark, as a refuge, um, uh, different connotation there, right? Preserving a world in the midst of, a lot of chaos, which is also really fascinating. All right, there's a few other things that have come in here. I want to get to Laura's question was, what was the term used for the lowest level of speech? And is it useful to aim to communicate more often at the soul level, or is this lowest level simply necessary in most interactions? Um,
So, I mean, that's a great question. I think it gets to kind of uh, the nature of being a human being, and it's nice to think that we could walk through the world, you know, uh, always interacting at the soul level. I think any of us who have experienced retreat and come back from retreat, that reentry period is very helpful in understanding that most of us, the way that we live in the world, we can't operate at that level of a tzaddik all the time, right? We can't operate at that soul
Mm,
level. People don't necessarily have patience for it, people that we encounter. Our lives are very busy, and quite frankly, like the person behind me in line at the grocery store getting groceries for an ill parent, my having a soul conversation with the cashier is not helpful to that person who needs to get those groceries to their to to their loved one who is in need. So those are the kind of considerations that I think can move us away from those soul conversations at a basic level. That being said, bringing kindness, compassion, empathy into those soul conversations, of course, into those basic conversations, doesn't necessarily, I think, raise them to the level of soul conversations, but it is what's intended in that in that in this teaching. I think
mhm.
that that the word, the opening for the word, is an invitation to really be mindful about our speech at all of those levels, recognizing that we use all of them as human beings, and that they're all necessary and important.
Mm, yeah. It's also interesting to think about, these days we have conversations that aren't, I mean, nonverbal doesn't mean just body language in an otherwise verbal conversation. It's also text messages and, and all sorts of mediated forms of conversation, right? And so that's also interesting to consider, like in this context, just want to, flag that. Um, but I think Lori's question is really important because this is the last question that's on the bottom here, at least on my screen, to talk more about what you mean by soul conversation.
Mm,
Just to say a little bit more about that.
yeah, it's a great question, and um, it's not an easy one for me to answer. Um, I know that for me, when I study with my chavruta, that those are soul conversations. I know when I've been with my mentors and I've received guidance from them, those are soul conversations. I know that when I've been in the position of mentoring others, those are definitely soul conversations. I think that there's a receiving of the other and a close attention and close listening that's involved in those conversations, and that also there's deep love and compassion for the other, that's brought into those conversations, and that they are conversations that invite us to dig a little more deeply than we might in just regular everyday interactions.
Mhm.
So that's what I mean by those soul conversations. I hope we've all had them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Thank you. Yeah, and it's a good intention to carry forward into the month of Cheshvan. Um, we're at our time, so I want to respect that and thank you, Kerith, for your time today. Thank Rachel for being on our tech, and thank everybody for being here as part of our community. Look forward to seeing you when we see you next. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time and station. And until then, we wish you farewell. Tzedchem l'shalom. We'll see you soon. Thank you.